Okay, so what we have here are the Tormek standard knife sharpening jig. This is the newest one. This one right here is the Tormek KJ45. It is a great jig. This one here is the original Tormek knife jig. They call this one the SVM45, and now they refer to it kind of as the classic. So I will talk about both of these. And then this one here is a Wen knockoff. And I made some modifications to it, and I could talk about the modifications here in a minute. But let's start with these three, because these, in my opinion, are the most important jigs. And when I say most important, I'm going to say these two are the most important. We'll leave the Wen out for now, but we will talk about the Wen. So let's start with the new one. This is the newest Tormek jig. It is the KJ45. Now you'll notice it is a little different than the SVM 45 in so much as the part that rides against the guide here is fixed. It isn't adjustable. And believe it or not, I switched the knobs on mine. So this knob actually came with this jig, and I switched them. And I'll tell you why. I actually prefer the old knob. I find it's easier to use than the new knob. Now, you can see that they shrunk the size. Now, obviously, they did this with a good intention in mind, which was to have a lower profile, because you can see there's a couple scratches in my old knob here for a few times when the knob did hit the stone. But I will tell you this. I have not encountered a single circumstance it's probably been a little over a year that I've had the new jig that I needed the original knob on it that came with it, the smaller knob. I have not had to switch it. I have not had a situation where it hit. So I wish what they would do was package this with two knobs, the thin one and the thick one. Unfortunately, they don't. So if you buy both, you'll have both sizes, and you can switch them back and forth. Like I said, I switched this because on this particular jig, you will be adjusting more often than you do with this jig. And sometimes it's harder to make those adjustments. So having a bigger knob for me is easier. So that was why I switched the two. And if I ever need to, I can just simply grab the other one and switch it back. But with the new jig, so there are times where if you see this isn't flush against your knife, what you have to do is loosen this nut a quarter turn and then retighten down with the larger one. And by switching the two, I just found it easier to do that. Now, what's nice about this jig? Well, one, it's self-centering. So what does that mean? It basically means that each one of these sides are perfectly equal and they squeeze together, centering the knife perfectly in the jig. And one of the complaints people had about the original knife jig is that technically it isn't self-centering. So this jig actually has a fixed side. As you can see here, it is one piece from here all the way down and then a top piece which gets adjusted down to the knife. So what does that mean? Well, technically it may not be perfectly self-centered. Now, does it make a difference? I'm going to tell you that probably 9% of the time, I've never found that it really made a difference. And this is a fantastic jig. And it's so fantastic that Tormek used it for probably 40 years or so before they just had their 50th anniversary, maybe 49 years they've used this similar jig before they decided to make a change to it. So anything that can be used for 49 years obviously has to be pretty good. So keep that in mind. Yes, it may not be self-centering, but are the bevels, perfectly symmetrical on both sides? I guess technically they're not. Can you notice? Probably not often on most knives. It has never been a problem for me, and I have sharpened thousands and thousands of knives on the Tormek. So, are they both worth owning? Well, yes, they are. And the main reason is, and I also knew when they first came out, some sharpeners I knew didn't even want this jig, and I'll tell you why. Okay? Now, it didn't affect me because I make the majority of my adjustments on the Tormek using the micro adjust on the guide bar, which is, here's my guide bar. It's this little wheel on the guide bar. See the little wheel here? So when I make an adjustment, I'm usually doing it on this little wheel. But there are sharpeners out there that I know that their favorite way to make an adjustment to what they were doing was to adjust this handle by moving in and out. And like I said, wasn't something I ever did, but some sharpeners liked that better. And when they saw that this here wasn't adjustable, some of them still probably haven't bought it. That said, they are both fantastic jigs, and I highly recommend that they are both worth owning at some point. So I would probably say get the new jig, try and find the old jig, either on eBay or someplace. You don't have to go out and buy the set that it comes with unless you want those other jigs. But if you're trying to save money, buy one of these two first. And if you want to try and get the older jig first, I would definitely get this. You should always, I would assume you'll be able to pick the new jig up for a long time since they just came out with it. But I can't say for sure that one day they won't stop manufacturing the what they now call the classic jig. So keep that in mind when you go shopping for your jigs.